Speedrunning games has been a thing for literally as far back as I can remember. While I've always been someone willing to chill and watch a speedrun or watch someone practice their running, I've actually never tried to speedrun anything, because if we're being honest, it's a pretty daunting endeavor. Not only do you have to memorize routes and tons of mechanics and all of this stuff, it's also pretty stressful. One little mistake can completely ruin a run for a game. Well, that changes today, because I'm going to attempt to speedrun Palworld with literally zero experience. So first things first, to speedrun Palworld, I needed to pick a category. And if you've seen Palworld speedruns at all, or just seen some higher level play, you'll know that the game actually has a pretty deep bag of tricks when it comes to mechanics. And well, I kinda suck. So looking at the categories and the times, I felt that the one we had the best shot of having a competitive run or going for the world record was going to be the Zoe glitchless category. This is a category, just like the name says, where you attempt to kill Zoe as fast as possible without using any of those nasty glitches. Nah, I'm just kidding. The times were just a bit longer on this one and I felt I had slightly more of a chance. So first things first, before we started running this ourselves, was to look up the first place run, see how he did it and what strategy he used, give us some ideas of where to start. This first place run was done by Chrome, and they got a time of 11 minutes and 55 seconds. Their run, I'm shortly put, is a little bit cheese. Now, jokes aside, the run consists of a very unique but also pretty luck-based strategy. Rather than many of the other runners in this category, Chrome would go all or nothing on a less than 2% catch chance on the Mamaranth in the starting area. He would go all in on this strategy rather than doing the more standard catching pals and leveling up. And to accomplish this, when he spawned, he would instantly respawn to a different area of the map, then walked into one of the higher level regions, which allowed him to open up some chests and find a Gigaball. Using this Gigaball, he would then respawn again all the way back at the starting area, and would eventually throw it at the Mamaranth boss that kind of patrols that starting hill. This catch, like I mentioned, is a less than 2% chance, and to his luck, it would go successfully. Now, I don't know how many runs it took him to get this, but this would instantly level him up to level 25, and from here he would basically just go to the boss with some minor pal catching and crafting, and end up defeating Zoe with a time of 11 minutes and 55 seconds. So as you can imagine, if you don't use this strategy, it's gonna be pretty hard to beat. And while it is pretty cool, and I give him major props for coming up with it, it also seemed a little bit luck-based, and being new to running, I wanted a strategy that we could optimize a bit more and practice rather than something that I would just constantly have to reset if the catch on the Mamaranth was unsuccessful. So let's get into the whole process, from mega noob to slightly more experienced noob, as I tried to learn how to speedrun a game completely from scratch. And honestly, it was kind of a good time. But before we get into the speedruns, I gotta give a huge shout out to today's video sponsor, and that is the Palworld server KHK. This is a really cool server though. Not only is it a dedicated multiplayer server that you can join, they have a Discord community, and they're actually pretty cool people. It also has some really fun perks. But one of the big things is they have a PvP version. This is pretty fun though, because while PvP isn't in the game officially, you can do it through dedicated servers like this and have some fun. They also have active admins, an economy system that's pretty cool, low ping, and the server's online 24/7. So if you're looking for a dedicated server that you want to check out, or you've never played multiplayer Palworld, this might be a decent server to check out. So again, thanks to them for supporting the video. Let's get back to it. First things first for our speedrun was to come up with a strategy. What pals did we want to use? What level did we want to aim for? What routes did we want to take? All the good stuff. Since Grisbolt is an electric type pal, it made sense for me to try and utilize early game pals with ground based moves, or even get a ground move from the skill tree that's over by the starting area. Our first run, as you could imagine, was extremely slow. What I did was pretty basic. I just slid down the original big hill, collecting some resources, even catching a crevice, and then I would head down to the big opening just below where the first tower is, plop down a crafting bench, even catching a little penguin boy in the process, and from there we would just head on over to the syndicate camp that sometimes spawns, get a free pal ball, and free an ice hedgehog from the camp. This would get us to level 4, which allowed us to build the spear, which was my planned weapon for the boss fight, and from here I would just basically awkwardly roam around the tower area, fighting dudes, catching some pals, crafting some stuff, and when I say this run was slow, I'm not kidding. About 14 minutes in, I would actually stumble into a lucky Kativa, and give that a nice little catch, getting us up to level 7, and just 4 minutes later, we would finally head over to the tower to begin the boss fight for the first time. Well, the first time, for our speedruns. This boss fight would not go that well, as my ability to juke the close range shock move while being in melee range was apparently like -100, and Grisbolt would wipe the squad. But that's okay, I mean it was literally the first run ever, and this was going to be somewhat of a learning process if we were to make any progress toward that world record spot. So what I learned basically on this run was we needed a much more efficient way of leveling up to get ready for the boss, but also a much more streamlined squad of pals to help out. Pals like Kremis, who boosted neutral pal attack, and Kativo with its swipe ability could put in some pretty solid DPS, but also pals like Gummus was another pretty decent one since he was ground type and could tank Grisbolt's abilities pretty well. And so there were a lot of different options. You could also go toward Fox Sparks, who is a fire type pal and could apply the fire type dot, and a whole slew of other pals that you could try out. I also learned that if we were going to try and use a spear, which was pretty easy to craft and get, we were going to have to suck a lot less and learn how to actually dodge the abilities, or, maybe just switch to a bow. And at this point, the third place run was 24 minutes and 56 seconds, which seemed a very attainable goal even at my mega noob level. Our next run would see a little bit more success using a similar strategy of just running around the tower to level up, and would get us to the boss fight at level 10 around the 24-minute mark, this time rocking a pal team of a couple Gummus, a Kremis, and a couple of the good old cats. And although I would almost die on many occasions, this would give us a run of 33 minutes and 31 seconds. Obviously, well outside the top 3, but at least I successfully killed the boss and learned that level 10 was a pretty good level to take on Zoe and Grisbolt. Kativa also seemed to put in some massive DPS with that swipe ability, especially when you boost that attack using the Kremis. It also doesn't hurt that Kativa lets you carry extra materials, which is pretty helpful since you're kind of running around with so many materials and you don't really have a home base that you're constantly going back to like you would in a normal Palworld game. I was still curious though, what other strategies could we try pal-wise? And I thought it might be worth checking out something based around some fire pals like the Fox Sparks. But before trying that, we would do another run just based around the cats and Kremis, and this time it would end up a bit quicker. We would get to the boss a little bit faster. However, some terrible gameplay at the end would leave me running out of time and dying in desperation, though had we killed Grisbolt, would have put us under 30 minutes. Fuck. Again, obviously not world record or top 3 pace even, but it would have been slightly faster than the previous run. The next one would be an extremely interesting one, as right off the rip I would run into a lucky Lambo. However, the fact that we actually ran into it so quickly put us in an awkward spot, as I didn't have any pal spheres, and by the time I finally caught it, I had wasted almost 5 minutes, which is not great for a speedrun. On top of this, Lambo is also kind of dog shit, if we're being honest. The dude just doesn't do the damage you'd need, even with the lucky trait. In this run, we'd also try some Fox Sparks in the squad, but unfortunately, again, it would end in a death on the boss fight. But in reality, I kind of just gave up and stood there because we lacked the damage to take out the boss, which was partly my fault because I came into the boss fight with our pals being a little bit underleveled, which was something we definitely needed to keep an eye on for future runs. While I was aiming for a specific level myself, like level 10, I had been neglecting to pay attention to the pal level, which is almost just as important, as they put in probably a majority of the damage in this boss fight. So getting pals that we were going to use in the boss fight into our party early on was actually really important, because we needed them to level up while we were leveling up, rather than just grab them at the end and have them be underleveled like we just did. Next run would be the one where I would try the Fox Spark strategy, and I figured to boost them up, we would grab some of the rubies, who are a fire type pal who boosts fire damage, similar to how Kremis boosts neutral damage. Now to get the ruby, you can't actually get those in the area that you generally spawn in, but you can use the respawn feature and respawn in a different starting location and go and catch some ruby in those areas, and then just respawn again back at that normal starting area. This strategy though, while it was a cool idea, was extremely slow, as getting the rubies just wasn't efficient at all, and regardless of which area you went that they spawned in, you would have to climb all the way up a cliff, which isn't very quick. This run though would actually still end up with me getting to the boss around 21 minutes, which wasn't too horrible of a pace, all things considered, but some horrid fighting on my part again would lead to another death. Oh my god. The fire pals though honestly just didn't seem to be worth it. Yeah, the fire dot is cool when it landed, but overall the DPS just seemed a lot lower than some of the other pals we had tried, like the good old Kativa. This would end my first night of running with a personal best of about 33 minutes and not really having a set strat in mind. Though we did realize that our most effective run was with the Kativa and the Kremis, so the plan for the next day was to kind of try that one a bit more. Optimize the run using Kativa and Kremis, but also, build a bow instead of trying to use a spear, as being up close and personal just wasn't doing it for me, and it also seemed like setting down an actual home base to let some of the Kativa farm up a bit while we were leveling would be a bit more efficient than just dropping crafting benches around as we went. Day 2 is where I felt that we really started to see some improvements in our runs. Sure, the scoreboard or the timer wasn't necessarily reflecting that at the end of the night, but it really felt like we were improving our runs. The first run of the night, we would actually try our new strategy to plop down an actual home base with the Kativa and use this as a home area to stock back up on balls and various other goodies. And with this base set on the starting hill, we could just slide down the whole hill, catching pals and grabbing materials as we went, hit the teleport at the bottom all the way back up to the top, and rinse and repeat, which made movement a whole lot faster than when we were just running around by the tower. Shockingly, being able to just, slide down a hill is a lot quicker than just walking around. I would also be utilizing the Kremis and Kativa strat, going 1 cat and 4 Kremis, basically making him a super powered swiping maniac. Around level 7 and about 11.5 minutes into the run, we would head over to the tower area, and near the tower is where we would get those last few needed levels, even hitting the Syndicate camp again just for some experience. This would get us into the boss fight right under 20 minutes and let our Kativa put in some damage while also utilizing our bow this time for DPS instead of using a melee weapon like the spear. Sadly, halfway through the fight though, I did not craft enough bows and we would run out, which meant for the remainder of the fight we would have to completely rely on the pals. Alright, it's all up to you again, Kativa. Show me the... Oh no, you got... Oh, you're getting beat up. You're getting yeeted. You got stomped on. Whatever, I'm letting him die. He's going in for the tank. Oh, he dodged it. He clutched up. Hit him, Kativa, hit him. Hit him, Kativa. Oh, you died, okay. Your services are no longer needed. Come on, Kremis. Come on, Kremis, one more. One more shot. Oh my god, he fucking whiffed it. He whiffed it. Obviously not an ideal fight, but this would be our new personal best, now sitting under 30 minutes at 28 minutes and 48 seconds. This put me within touching distance of that top 3 run. And you know what, for being extremely inexperienced at this point, that didn't seem too bad. The rest of the night though, however, was a lot less successful. While we certainly got faster at leveling and optimized it a little bit, I was still really struggling with the boss fight at the end. And if you can't kill the boss at the end of the run, it doesn't matter how fast we're leveling because you have to kill the boss to complete the speed run. For whatever reason, that move where Grizzbolt just jumps on top of you, I just honestly was really struggling to dodge it, and we would wipe to that ability on multiple occasions. I just don't like this game, actually. I actually dislike this game. I have a great hatred of this video game. During the night, I would also realize that a team of 3 to 4 cats and about 1 to 2 Kremis seemed optimal, as the cats had a much higher DPS than the Kremis, but this also allowed you to have some backup cats in case the first 1 or 2 died, and then you weren't just stuck using the Kremis for the rest of the fight. I also would start to utilize a triple bow instead of, the regular bow, and realize that using a triple bow, we would need roughly 140-ish bows, as that would get us through the fight. I even changed up my utilization of skill points, which up to this point I had kind of been just applying randomly, and I would start to focus much more on work speed rather than stamina and attack power like I had been doing previously. This allowed some big time saver when we were crafting a ton of the arrows and the bow, and I felt like overall this made the run a lot quicker, because while stamina is very nice for traveling around, if we were sticking to that big hill, then stamina isn't as important. I also realized that if we didn't get a pal sphere on the initial slide down the hill, the run was pretty much just chalked, and rather than continuing on and seeing how it would go, I would just restart right then and there. During this night though, something terrible would happen for our speedrunning career, as I would head on over to speedruns.com to verify the rules on a specific thing, and this is when I noticed a new run had been submitted which put a runner by the name of Carsonic in the 3rd place spot at 29 minutes and 9 seconds, which was much quicker than the previous 3rd place run. I won't lie, this was a little disheartening, as realistically, I was aiming for that top 3 spot, and having it pop up made it seem so much less achievable. Some of our deaths at the boss would get us pretty close to that sub 20 minute mark had I not died, but alas, that would kind of end the second night of running. We improved the PR a tiny bit, but it also felt like we had finally found a good strategy. We just needed to optimize the leveling part to get to the boss a bit quicker and stop being a noob and dying to the boss. So this would begin day 3 of our speedrunning career, which would actually be our final day that we would try and set the best time possible, because what's a good challenge without a ridiculous time restraint on top of it? So this was make or break. Could we break into the top 3 by the end of the night? Going into night 3, we also did a little research and looked up the strats that both Reckless Rogue, who was the 2nd place runner, and Carsonic, who was the 3rd place runner, used during their runs, and I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that they were also using Kativa and the triple shot bow, so it seemed like we had stumbled into a pretty decent strategy. The only big difference that I noticed between their runs and mine is that I was trying to utilize the Cremis to boost up the cats, which made me think that the addition of the Cremis could slightly optimize our boss fight, pushing us past at least the 3rd place time. Similarly to night 2, and I don't know, it must just be a mental thing, the first run of night 3 would actually be one of the most successful yet, and after a fairly decent leveling run and some solid Kativa DPS, combined with the good old 3-shot bow, woo! This would put us literally right outside of top 3, sub 20 minutes and less than a minute behind the 3rd place runner, and it seemed like this was really the strategy we needed to use. We just had to get to the boss fight a tiny bit quicker. Throughout that night, I would change up things a little bit, like pre-crafting all the balls at once and traveling down to the tower earlier on to get the teleport and then teleporting back, along with trying to pay a bit more attention to the traits of the captured pals. But sadly, even though I did wipe the boss a couple more times, or was in position to kill it a few more times, I was always slightly slower than our 1958 run. I even tried some different strategies, like utilizing a single shot bow instead of a triple shot bow, which means we didn't have to level all the way up to level 10, but sadly this seemed to really slow down the boss fight and it wasn't really worth it, and despite various attempts, at the end of the night, that 1958 time would be our best one yet. Overall though, this would be a really fun experience. Sure, we didn't get top 3 or even the world record like we wanted, but it was fun to try something new, and chat was actually really cool during the whole process. I feel like during this I actually gained a newfound respect for speedrunners, as while I certainly picked a less mechanically intensive one, I could see how stressful it got with every click and every movement trying to be perfect to get that time down. One little mistake literally ruins a whole run. Now obviously, running something like Palworld's a lot different than some games, as it has much more randomness associated to it, kind of similar to a Minecraft speedrun, but I feel like I understand now even more how much work and skill goes into the craft. Not that I thought it was easy before, but now I have a little bit of experience. I may not have broken top 3, but for my first ever speedrunning attempts, ending up right outside of the top 3, I don't feel like that's a terrible result. And you know what? Having my name on the official speedrun website is kinda cool. Will I speedrun more Palworld to try to optimize my run more, or decide to speedrun other games that I enjoy? No, probably not, but I did enjoy the process. So a huge thanks for watching if you made it this far in the video. Thanks again to the video sponsor KHK, and if you want to catch me try some of these challenges, make sure you guys either follow me over on Twitch or just watch out on YouTube for the live streams. It's usually a pretty chill time. Obviously, it's a lot different because it's not scripted content, but you can hang out while I try all these different challenges. Let me know in the comments below what kind of challenge you'd want to see next, and I hope to see you guys all next time.